The letter trembled in my hands, its contents threatening to shatter the peaceful life I'd built. I read it again, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less devastating. They didn't. "Sarah?" Ethan's voice floated up from downstairs. "Everything okay?" I swallowed hard, stuffing the letter into my pocket. "Fine, honey. Just sorting through some old papers." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Ethan and I had always prided ourselves on our honesty. But how could I confront him with this? How could I ask my husband of 15 years if he'd been living a double life? I made my way downstairs, plastering on a smile as I entered the kitchen. Ethan stood at the stove, stirring a pot of his famous chili. The domestic scene felt surreal now, tainted by the weight of the secret in my pocket. "There you are," he said, flashing me that boyish grin that had first stolen my heart. "Taste this for me, will you?" I obliged, letting the spicy flavors dance on my tongue. It was delicious as always. But the warmth of the chili couldn't chase away the chill that had settled in my bones. "Perfect," I managed, forcing a smile. Ethan's brow furrowed. "You sure you're okay, Sarah? You look a little pale." I waved off his concern. "Just tired from work. Nothing a good night's sleep won't fix." He nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Well, dinner's almost ready. Why don't you set the table?" As I laid out plates and silverware, my mind raced. Should I confront him now? Or wait until I had more proof? The letter had been anonymous, after all. But the details, they were too specific to be a random accusation. We sat down to eat, the silence between us growing heavier with each passing moment. Ethan chatted about his day at the office, oblivious to my inner turmoil. "Oh, I almost forgot," he said suddenly. "Your sister called earlier. She wants us to come over for dinner this weekend." I nearly choked on my chili. "Lisa? What did she want?" Ethan shrugged. "Just to catch up, I guess. It's been a while since we've seen her." My grip tightened on my fork. "Lisa." Of course she'd be involved in this somehow. Our relationship had always been strained, but this was a new low, even for her. "I don't think that's a good idea," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Ethan looked up, surprised. "Why not?" "I thought you two were trying to patch things up." I laughed bitterly. "Patch things up? Lisa's never cared about anyone but herself." "Sarah," Ethan said, his tone gentle, "what's really going on? You've been acting strange all evening." For a moment I considered telling him everything, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I need some air," I muttered, heading for the door. "Sarah, wait." But I was already gone, stepping out into the cool night air. My hand slipped into my pocket, fingers brushing against the crumpled letter. I pulled it out, reading it one more time in the dim glow of the porch light. The words seemed to mock me now. "Your husband isn't who you think he is. Ask him about July 15th, 2010. Ask him about the cabin in the woods. Ask him about the baby." I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. When I opened them again, I saw Ethan watching me from the window, concern etched across his face. In that moment, I knew our life would never be the same. The perfect marriage, the successful careers, the plans for our future. It all felt like a house of cards, ready to come crashing down. And somewhere out there, I was sure Lisa was laughing. I stood outside Lisa's apartment, my hand poised to knock. The familiar dread I always felt around my younger sister churned in my stomach. But I needed answers, and Lisa was the only one who might have them. Taking a deep breath, I rapped on the door. Moments later, it swung open, revealing Lisa's perfectly made-up face and designer outfit. Well, well," she drawled, leaning against the doorframe. "If it isn't my successful big sister, to what do I owe the pleasure?" I pushed past her into the apartment, ignoring her sarcasm. "We need to talk, Lisa." She closed the door, her eyes narrowing. "About what?" I pulled the crumpled letter from my pocket, thrusting it towards her. About this. Did you send it?" Lisa barely glanced at the paper. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb," I snapped. "It's about Ethan. About a baby. What do you know?" For a split second, something flashed across Lisa's face. Surprise? Fear? But it was gone so quickly, I couldn't be sure. "Sarah," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "I think you're losing it. Why would I know anything about Ethan's secrets?" I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to shake her. "Because you've always been jealous of what Ethan and I have. You've always tried to come between us." Lisa laughed, the sound grating on my nerves. Oh, please, not everything is about you, sis. Maybe Ethan just got tired of playing house with Little Miss Perfect. Her words hit me like a slap. What's that supposed to mean? She shrugged, moving to pour herself a glass of wine. Nothing. Just that maybe there's more to your precious husband than you know. I watched her, my suspicion growing. You do know something, don't you? Tell me, Lisa, what happened on July 15th, 2010? The wine glass froze halfway to her lips. What? July 15th, 2010, I repeated. The cabin in the woods, the baby. What do you know? Lisa set down her glass, her composure slipping. I don't know what you're talking about, but I could see the lie in her eyes. You're protecting him, I realized. Why? What hold does Ethan have over you? Get out, Lisa hissed, her face flushing. You're crazy, Sarah. Always have been. Always will be. I stood my ground. Not until you tell me the truth. Lisa's eyes darted around the room, like a cornered animal. Then suddenly she lunged for her phone on the coffee table. What are you doing? I demanded. Calling Ethan, she spat. He needs to know how unhinged his wife has become. I moved without thinking, grabbing her wrist. Don't you dare. We struggled for a moment, Lisa's manicured nails digging into my skin. In the scuffle, a framed photo on the side table crashed to the floor. We both froze, staring at the shattered glass. And that's when I saw it. A glimpse of a photo I'd never seen before, half hidden under the broken frame. I bent down, my heart pounding. It was a picture of Lisa and Ethan. They were standing in front of a small wooden cabin, Ethan's arm around Lisa's waist, and Lisa was holding a baby. The room spun around me as I picked up the photo with trembling hands. What is this? Lisa's face had gone pale. Sarah, I can explain. But I was already backing away, the truth hitting me like a tidal wave. My sister. My husband. A secret child. How could you? I whispered, my voice breaking. Lisa reached for me, her eyes pleading. Sarah, please. I shoved past her, stumbling out of the apartment. The last thing I heard was Lisa's voice calling after me. Sarah, wait, you don't understand. But I understood all too well. As I ran down the stairs, clutching the damning photo, I realized that everything I thought I knew about my life had been a lie. And the worst part? This was only the beginning. The drive to Ethan's parents' house was excruciating. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, as Ethan chatted about work beside me. How could he act so normal when our world was crumbling? Sarah? Ethan's voice broke through my thoughts. You missed the turn. I jerked the wheel, making a sharp U-turn. Sorry, I was distracted. Ethan frowned. You've been distracted a lot lately. Is everything okay? I wanted to scream, to confront him about the photo, about Lisa, about everything, but not here, not now. I'm fine, I lied. Just stressed about work. We pulled into Lyle and Martha's driveway, the familiar two-story colonial looming before us. I'd always felt welcome here, but today the house seemed to hold secrets of its own. Martha greeted us at the door, her smile warm but her eyes sharp. Sarah, dear, and Ethan, my boy. Come in, come in. As we stepped inside, I noticed Martha's gaze lingering on Ethan, a silent exchange passing between them. My suspicion deepened. Lyle emerged from his study, clapping Ethan on the back. Good to see you, son. Sarah, you're looking lovely as ever. We settled in the living room, making small talk about work and the weather. But there was an undercurrent of tension, like a live wire running beneath the polite conversation. So, Martha said, setting down her teacup, when are you two going to give us some grandchildren? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I saw Ethan stiffen beside me. Mom, he said, his voice strained, we've talked about this. Sarah and I are focused on our careers right now. Martha's eyes narrowed. But surely you want children, Ethan. You've always been so good with kids. Something in her tone made me sit up straighter. What do you mean, Martha? She waved a hand dismissively. Oh, you know, he's always been a natural with children. Remember that summer you spent volunteering at the youth camp, Ethan? Ethan's face had gone pale. That was a long time ago, Mom. Summer camp? I asked, my heart racing. When was this? Oh, must have been, 2010? Martha said, her eyes never leaving Ethan's face. 2010. The year from the letter. The year in the photo with Lisa and the baby. Ethan never mentioned a summer camp, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Lyle cleared his throat. Perhaps we should change the subject. No, I interrupted, turning to Ethan. I'd love to hear about this camp. Was it near a cabin in the woods by any chance? The room went deathly silent. Ethan's face was a mask of shock and guilt. Martha set down her teacup with a clatter. "I think I need some fresh air," she announced, hurrying out to the patio. I stood up, my legs shaky. "I'll join you, Martha." Outside, the cool air did nothing to calm my racing heart. Martha was leaning against the railing, her back to me. "You know, don't you?" I said quietly. "About Ethan and Lisa. About the baby." Martha's shoulders sagged. She turned to face me, her eyes brimming with tears. "Oh, Sarah, I'm so sorry. We never meant for you to find out like this." "So it's true," I whispered, my world shattering around me. Martha reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "It's complicated, dear. There's so much you don't understand." "Then help me understand," I cried, my voice rising. "Tell me the truth, Martha, all of it." She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, the patio door slid open. Ethan stood there, his face a mix of fear and resignation. "No, Mom," he said quietly. "I'll tell her. It's time Sarah knew everything." As I looked between them, I realized that whatever Ethan was about to say would change my life forever, and there was no going back. I stormed into my parents' house, my emotions a volatile mix of anger and desperation. The confrontation with Ethan and his parents had left me reeling, and I needed answers. Real answers from the people who had raised me. "Mom? Dad?" I called out, my voice echoing through the familiar halls. My mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Sarah? What's wrong, honey? You look upset." Dad emerged from his study, his brow furrowed with concern. "Is everything all right?" I laughed bitterly. "No, everything is not all right. I need to talk to you both, now." We gathered in the living room, the tension palpable. I paced back and forth, trying to gather my thoughts. "Sarah, you're scaring us," Mom said softly. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath, then plunged in. "I know about Ethan and Lisa. I know about the baby." The color drained from both their faces. Dad's hand tightened on the armrest of his chair. What are you talking about?" Mom stammered. "Don't," I snapped. "Don't lie to me. Not anymore. I found a photo of them together with a baby at some cabin. And Ethan's parents, they know something too. I want the truth. All of it." My parents exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Dad sighed heavily, suddenly looking much older than his years. "Sarah, honey," he began, "it's complicated." "Stop saying that," I shouted, my composure finally breaking. "Everyone keeps saying it's complicated, but no one will tell me what's really going on." Mom reached out to me, but I jerked away. "We were trying to protect you," she said, her voice trembling. "Protect me?" I scoffed. "By lying to me for years? By letting me marry a man who had a child with my own sister?" Dad stood up, his face grave. "It wasn't like that, Sarah. At least she was in trouble. Ethan was trying to help." "Help?" I repeated incredulously. "By fathering her child?" "No," Mom interjected. "Ethan isn't the father. He never was." The room spun around me. "What?" Dad took a deep breath. "Lisa got mixed up with some bad people. She was young, naive. When she found out she was pregnant, she was scared. Ethan, he offered to help her hide until the baby was born." "But the photo," I whispered, "was taken the day Lisa gave the baby up for adoption," Mom finished. "Ethan was there for moral support." I sank onto the couch, my mind reeling. Why didn't anyone tell me? "Lisa made us promise," Dad said. "She was ashamed, Sarah, and we thought it was better if you didn't know. We never imagined it would come out like this." The pieces were falling into place, but something still didn't add up. "But why keep it a secret all these years? Why did Ethan never tell me?" My parents exchanged another loaded glance. Mom's voice was barely above a whisper when she spoke. "Because the people Lisa was involved with, they're dangerous, Sarah. We were all trying to keep you safe." A chill ran down my spine. Safe from what? Before they could answer, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Stay away from Lisa, for your own good." I showed the message to my parents, watching the color drain from their faces once again. "Oh God," Mom breathed. "They've found her." Dad's voice was urgent. "Sarah, listen to me. You need to leave town. Now. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Not even Ethan." "But—" "No buts," he insisted. "We'll explain everything later, I promise. But right now, you need to go. Please, Sarah. Trust us." As I looked into their frightened eyes, I realized I had a choice to make. Stay and demand more answers, or run from a danger I didn't fully understand. With shaking hands, I grabbed my keys. "I'll call you when I'm safe," I promised. As I rushed out the door, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The truth I'd sought had only led to more questions, and now it seemed it had put my very life in danger. I paced the living room, my nerves frayed to the breaking point. It had been 3 days since I'd fled my parents' house, and Ethan still hadn't come home. My calls went straight to voicemail, my texts unanswered. The silence was deafening. A knock at the door made me jump. Heart racing, I approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. It was Martha, Ethan's mother. I opened the door, my voice trembling. "Martha, what are you doing here?" Her eyes were red-rimmed, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled. "Sarah, dear, I need to talk to you about Ethan." A chill ran down my spine. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. Martha sank onto the couch, her hands twisting in her lap. "Have you heard from him?" I shook my head. "Nothing. I was hoping you had." She closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. "He's gone, Sarah. He left a note. Oh, God, I can't believe this is happening again." "Again?" I repeated, my mind reeling. "What do you mean, again? Martha, what's going on?" She pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her purse, handing it to me with shaking hands. "Read it, please." I unfolded the note, recognizing Ethan's handwriting immediately. "Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. They found her. I have to go. Keep Sarah safe. I love you all. E." The room spun around me. "Who found who?" "Martha, please. I need to understand what's happening." Martha's voice was barely above a whisper. "It's happening all over again, just like with Lisa." "Lisa?" I said, my voice rising. "What does she have to do with this?" Martha looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resignation. "Everything, Sarah. Lisa is at the center of it all." She took a deep breath, then began to speak. "Years ago, before you and Ethan were married, Lisa got involved with some very dangerous people. A criminal organization. She thought she was in love, but she was being used." I sank into a chair, my legs no longer able to support me. "Go on," I whispered. "When she realized she was pregnant, she came to Ethan for help. He hid her at the cabin, helped her give the baby up for adoption. We thought it was over, that she was safe. But now they've found her," I finished, the pieces finally falling into place. Martha nodded. "And Ethan? Oh, Sarah, he's always felt responsible. He couldn't save her then, but now." "He's gone after her," I said, the realization hitting me like a punch to the gut. Just then, my phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. "Time's up. Choose a side." I showed it to Martha, watching the color drain from her face. "Oh, God," she whispered. "Sarah, you need to leave. Now, it's not safe here anymore." But as I stared at the message, something inside me snapped. I was tired of running, tired of being kept in the dark. "No," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "I'm not going anywhere. It's time I faced this head on." Martha's eyes widened. "Sarah, you don't understand. These people, they're dangerous." "I don't care," I interrupted. "Ethan's out there, risking his life for my sister. I can't just sit here and do nothing." I stood up, a plan already forming in my mind. "I'm going to find them, Martha. Both of them, and I'm going to end this once and for all." Martha reached for me, her voice pleading. "Sarah, please think about what you're saying. You could be killed." But my mind was made up. As I looked at Martha's terrified face, I knew I was crossing a line from which there was no return. "I'd rather die fighting than live in fear," I said, my voice steady. "It's time to finish what Lisa started all those years ago." As I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Whatever lay ahead, whatever dangers I might face, I knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. I stood in Ethan's favorite bar, surrounded by his friends, their accusing glares burning into me. I'd come here hoping for answers, but all I found was hostility. "What did you do to him, Sarah?" Jake, Ethan's best friend, demanded. "He was fine until that night he came home from your parents' place." I flinched, remembering the argument that had preceded Ethan's disappearance. "I didn't do anything. I'm trying to find him, just like you are." "Bull," Sarah, another friend, spat. "Ethan would never just leave, not unless you pushed him away." The unfairness of it all made my blood boil. "You don't know anything about what's going on," I snapped. "None of you do." Jake stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. "Then enlighten us, Sarah. What exactly is going on?" For a moment, I considered telling them everything about Lisa, the baby, the dangerous people from her past. But the memory of that threatening text message stopped me. I couldn't risk putting anyone else in danger. "I can't," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm sorry, but I can't explain. The group's hostility seemed to intensify. I felt cornered, outnumbered. "Maybe you should just go," Sarah said coldly. "We'll find Ethan ourselves." As I turned to leave, defeated, my phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. "Tick-tock, Sarah. Time's running out for Ethan and Lisa." My heart raced. I had to get out of here, had to keep searching. But as I reached for the door, a hand grabbed my arm. "What's that?" Jake demanded, having seen the message over my shoulder. "Who's threatening you? And what does Lisa have to do with this?" Before I could answer, the bar's TV caught my attention. A breaking news banner flashed across the screen. "Local businessman Ethan Roberts and sister-in-law Lisa Carter missing. Foul play suspected." The room fell silent as everyone turned to watch. My legs gave out, and I sank onto a bar stool, my world crumbling around me. The reporter's voice seemed to come from far away. "Sources say Roberts and Carter were last seen entering an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Police are treating their disappearance as suspicious." "Sarah," Jake's voice was gentler now, tinged with concern. "What the hell is going on?" I opened my mouth to respond, but my phone buzzed again. This time it was Martha calling. "Sarah," she sobbed as soon as I answered. "They've taken Lyle. They left a note. They want you to come alone to the warehouse. Oh, God, Sarah, what are we going to do?" The room spun around me. Ethan, Lisa, and now Lyle, all in danger because of me. Because I'd started asking questions, because I'd refused to let sleeping dogs lie. "I'll handle it, Martha," I heard myself say, my voice sounding strangely calm. "Just stay where you are. I'll bring them all home." As I hung up, I realized Ethan's friends were staring at me, their expressions a mix of confusion and growing understanding. "Sarah," Jake said slowly, "whatever's happening, you don't have to face it alone. Let us help." For a moment, I was tempted. But then I remembered the threats, the danger. I couldn't risk anyone else's life. "I'm sorry," I said, standing up. "But this is something I have to do on my own." As I walked out of the bar, my heart pounding and my mind racing, I knew I was walking into a trap. But I had no choice. Ethan, Lisa, Lyle, their lives were in my hands now. With each step towards my car, towards the warehouse where my fate awaited, I felt a strange mix of terror and determination. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. By the end of this night, everything would change. And I had to be ready for whatever came my way. The church was packed for Lyle's funeral. I sat in the front pew, numb with grief and exhaustion. The past week had been a blur of police interviews, sleepless nights, and unanswered questions. Martha sat beside me, her hand clutching mine, both of us lost in our sorrow. As the minister began his eulogy, a commotion at the back of the church caught my attention. I turned, and my heart stopped. There, standing in the doorway, was Ethan, and beside him, looking pale and shaken, was Lisa. A collective gasp rippled through the congregation. Martha's grip on my hand tightened painfully. "Sarah," she whispered, her voice trembling, "what's happening?" I couldn't answer. I was frozen, watching as Ethan and Lisa made their way down the aisle. Ethan's eyes were fixed on me, a mixture of guilt and determination in his gaze. They reached the front, and Ethan spoke, his voice carrying through the stunned silence. "I'm sorry for interrupting, but there's something we need to say, something that can't wait any longer." The minister stepped aside, clearly at a loss. I stood up, my legs shaking. "Ethan," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "where have you been? What's going on?" He took a deep breath, glancing at Lisa before turning back to me. "Sarah? We've been hiding from the people who were after Lisa, the ones who killed Lyle." A murmur ran through the church. I felt like I was in a nightmare, unable to wake up. "But that's not all," Lisa chimed in, her voice small and frightened. "Ethan and we've been—" "No," I said, shaking my head. "Don't say it. Please, don't say it." But Ethan pressed on, his words like daggers to my heart. "We've been having an affair, Sarah. It started when I went to help Lisa hide. I'm so sorry. We never meant for it to happen, but—" The world tilted around me. I heard Martha's shocked gasp, felt the weight of everyone's stares. But all I could focus on was the crushing pain in my chest. "How could you?" I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "After everything we've been through, how could you do this?" Ethan reached for me, but I jerked away. "Sarah, please. You have to understand. We were scared. We thought we were going to die. It just happened." Lisa stepped forward, her eyes pleading. "Sarah, I know you must hate me, But we need your help. The people who killed Lyle, they're still after us. We don't know who else to turn to." I laughed bitterly, the sound echoing through the church. "You betray me in the worst possible way, and now you want my help. How dare you?" But even as the words left my mouth, I knew I couldn't turn them away. Not with killers on their trail. Not with Lyle's death still unsolved. Martha stood up, her voice shaking with anger. "Get out, both of you. How dare you come here to Lyle's funeral with this betrayal?" Ethan's face crumpled. "Mom, please." We didn't know where else to go. Suddenly, the church doors burst open. 2 men in dark suits strode in, their hands reaching inside their jackets. "There they are," one shouted. "Get them!" Chaos erupted. People screamed, scrambling for cover. Ethan grabbed Lisa's hand, pulling her towards a side exit. "Sarah," he called over his shoulder. "Please, help us." As gunshots rang out, shattering the stained glass windows, I found myself faced with an impossible choice. Stay and let Ethan and Lisa fend for themselves, or risk everything to help the 2 people who had hurt me the most. In that moment, with bullets flying and my world crumbling around me, I made a decision that would change everything. And as I ran after Ethan and Lisa, ducking to avoid the gunfire, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. I stood in the lawyer's office, my hands clenched at my sides, as Ethan and Lisa argued vehemently about their supposed rights to the family assets. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of revelations and betrayals, but nothing could have prepared me for this final insult. "You can't do this, Sarah," Ethan shouted, his face red with anger. "I'm Lyle's son. I have a right to my inheritance." Lisa nodded vigorously. "And as Ethan's partner, I should have a claim too. It's only fair." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Fair? You want to talk about fair? After everything you've done?" The lawyer, Mr. Thompson, cleared his throat. "If I may interject, the situation is quite clear legally. Mrs. Roberts, Sarah, is now legally Martha's adopted daughter. As such, she has full rights to the estate, as per Mrs. Roberts' will." Ethan's jaw dropped. When did this happen?" I smiled sadly. "While you were off playing house with my sister Ethan, Martha and I grew closer. She saw how much I cared for her, how I stood by her side through everything. She made her choice." Lisa lunged forward, her eyes wild. "You manipulated her. You turned her against us." "No, Lisa," I said firmly. "You did that all on your own. Both of you did." Mr. Thompson produced a document. "I have here Mrs. Roberts' last will and testament. It clearly states that all assets are to be transferred to her daughter, Sarah. There's no ambiguity." Ethan slumped in his chair, the fight seeming to drain out of him. "Sarah, please. We can work this out. We're family." I felt a surge of strength I didn't know I possessed. "No, Ethan. We were family. You and Lisa destroyed that when you betrayed me, when you lied, when you put your own selfish desires above everything else." "What about forgiveness?" Lisa pleaded. "Isn't that what family does?" I turned to her, my voice steady. "Forgiveness is earned, Lisa, and neither of you has done anything to deserve it." Just then, the office door opened and Adam walked in. My rock, my support through this entire ordeal. He came to stand beside me, his hand on my shoulder. "Is everything okay here?" he asked, his eyes never leaving Ethan and Lisa. I nodded, drawing strength from his presence. "Yes, we're just wrapping up." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Who's this?" "This is Adam," I said, my voice filled with pride. "My husband." The shock on their faces was almost comical. Lisa sputtered. "Husband? But how? When?" "While you two were busy trying to tear this family apart," Adam said calmly, "Sarah and I were building something new, something stronger." I turned to Mr. Thompson. "I believe we're done here. Please ensure that all the paperwork is in order." As we turned to leave, Ethan made one last desperate attempt. "Sarah, please, we can start over. Give us another chance." I paused at the door, looking back at the 2 people who had once meant everything to me. "No, Ethan, this is the end. I'm moving forward with my life, with people who truly love and respect me. I hope someday you both understand the damage you've caused." With that, Adam and I walked out, leaving Ethan and Lisa behind, not just in the office, but in my life. As we stepped into the sunlight, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The pain wasn't gone, not completely. But for the first time in months, I felt hope. "Are you okay?" Adam asked gently. I smiled up at him, tears in my eyes. "I will be. We will be." As we walked hand in hand towards our future, I realized that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the one you're born into. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I had the strength to face them. The old Sarah, naive, trusting, easily manipulated, was gone. In her place stood a woman who had weathered the storm and emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace the life she deserved. And as I looked towards the horizon, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The journey had been painful, but it had led me exactly where I needed to be.